Chapter 16. Worms, Wolves. The next day started off terrific. The daybreak colours were striking, and the clouds looked like pure cotton balls. The boy believed he'd never seen anything so beautiful. It was a new day, and he felt great. He was confident he could handle anything. It was one of those days people have in which their only thoughts are of, I did this, or I sure was good at that. It was a real me day. They travelled for about half the day, walking mostly uphill. There was nothing remarkable to note except that it was becoming work to just walk. As they came around a bend in the path, the boy saw that the path divided up ahead. The path on his left went up a rise, and the one on his right went downhill. The boy considered both, and then he decided he wanted to take what he thought to be the easier way. The fox also took in the situation. In the middle of where the path split stood a cactus. The fox had been looking at the top of the cactus, studying something. He called out to his friend, who had already started down the right-hand path, "Boy, boy, come back. We need to go the other way." The boy turned his head, displaying a hard look on his face, which was out of character with his new behaviour. "No," he said. "I want to go this way." The fox pointed to what he had seen on the cactus and said, "But, boy—" "No, fox," interrupted the boy. "Down here is where I want to go. We will go this way." The fox couldn't believe it. He was completely perplexed and thought, "I've got to warn him." But as he started to call out, "Boy," he realized that the boy was not going to listen to him. The boy had made up his mind. The fox, being as committed to the boy as he was, decided to follow, hoping to bring up what he had seen when the boy was ready to listen. The fox mumbled to himself, "This was supposed to be the easiest part of the journey." He moved down the path despite the ominous feeling in the air. As they travelled down this new path, the brush began to grow thicker and thicker on each side. 3 more times the fox attempted to turn the boy around, but the boy was having a me day. There were buckbrush, sagebrush, and manzanita, which were the toughest of bushes. Where before they had been out about waist high, they were now as high as the boy's chest, and higher in some places. In fact, the brush became so thick and so tangled and so intertwined that, if not for the path, they could not have passed through it. The thought crossed the boy's mind that if they had to get off this path in a hurry, they wouldn't be able to because the brush was just too thick. Then the boy heard something that chilled his very soul. He had heard scary sounds before in his life, but this was something that cut clear through to the bone. When he heard it again, he recognized what it was. From way off to his left, the sounds came rolling over the tops of the brush, a bone-chilling howl. It was answered up ahead and off to the right. The boy froze, and his eyes grew wide with fear as he heard howling from all around. The boy looked at the fox, who looked back at him and simply shrugged his shoulders. "Ah, whine, whine, whine," answered the boy, whose self-confidence remained in control despite his growing doubts. He was still definitely having a me day. The fox lowered his head and followed the boy. The boy didn't look at the fox as he spoke. "This is my decision." He abruptly turned his back on the fox and, with a little more quickness to his step, continued along his way. The fox stood still with a look of bewilderment on his face. "I can't believe you're going to go on, boy. Listen, there's something I haven't told you yet." "About taking the other path, you mean?" "Yes, boy. Back there, over the hill. I saw it." The boy interrupted him again, saying, "That was uphill. I wanted to go down. This way is easy. This is the way I want to go. You saw how I handled all those lion anger creatures back there. Well, you did see, didn't you? What do we have to worry about? You know I can take care of myself." The fox replied, "It probably won't do any good to say this, boy, but there's great danger." "Ah, just stop with all that crap, okay, man? Hey, we're in good shape. I can handle anything, even those howls. They don't scare me, Fox. I have the belt." The fox just hung his head and shook it. The boy, knowing he was in an awkward position, looked at the sky. He took a deep breath and sighed heavily, and he thought, "Maybe the fox is right. But this is downhill and easier, and I'm tired of going up." So the boy, with the faithful fox beside him, resumed his way down the path. The brush thinned somewhat and eventually disappeared altogether. The ground became sandy and desert-like. Nervous about their direction, the boy, more to reassure himself than anyone else, said, "See? Look, we can still see the Triple Peaks over there." But the path had ended. Big saguaro cacti, tall and big like trees, were everywhere in this country. The brush was short and widely scattered. The sun was directly overhead, hot and unrelenting. The boy looked at the fox, who had a worried look on his face. Another howl broke the silence. It was soon answered by howl after howl. They still came from a distance, but the boy realized with a shiver that they were closer than they had been before. With overwhelming arrogance, the boy thought to himself, "Oh, well, help from our side is probably on its way right now." What he didn't realize was that his bad decisions had taken the power of intervention away, and he had made a very bad decision. Plenty of daylight was left. However, he could not see very far in the sandy environment. The heat waves turned the near distance into ever-changing, shimmering wall of lights. In fact, it was as though hundreds of mirrors were out there revolving and moving so that he couldn't tell what was real and what was not. More than his visual confusion, though, the boy was struck by the physical heat, intense and burning. Without warning, the boy sighted something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. At first he caught just a glimpse of it off to his left. Clenching his teeth to keep them from chattering, the boy set his sights on the Triple Peaks and started to walk at a fast pace. Out of the corner of his eye, he sighted another one, and he recognized the features. The pointy, furry ears, the ragged fur on top of the animal's head, the narrow, gleaming eyes that pierced through whatever they looked at. It was a wolf. A horrible wolf. Signaling the danger to the fox, the boy began to run. He was afraid that if they got caught out in the open like this, they would certainly meet their end. He ran on another 20 yards before he saw movement over to his right. He was sure there was another wolf over there. The howls were continuous now, much louder and much, much closer. The boy began to run with all of his might, the fox by his side. As he ran, he saw them clearly. To his left, 7 wolves loped along in single file, easily keeping his stride. The boy knew that these were not regular, everyday type wolves. These were massive wolves, and each one had something abnormal about it. The lead one had a huge jaw and oversized canine teeth, intermeshed and sticking up out of its closed mouth. The wolf behind him had an oversized chest cavity. All of them were gaunt and thin, their ribs stuck out, showing that they were hungry. No, ravenous wolves. The boy looked to his right and saw 7 more wolves. These were also massive and abnormal. Some of them had huge, oversized claws, and others had holes where their eyes had been gouged out. They all had rips and scars over their bodies from fighting. The boy was running as fast as he could. The wolves, however, were loping easily and confidently, now and then glancing over at the boy with knowing grins on their faces. In the distance, the boy saw 14 wolves lined up side by side and walking slowly toward him. They must have been 4 feet tall at the shoulders. The wolves on either side of him sat down on their haunches. The boy, panicking, turned and ran back the way he had come. Running as fast as he could, his wind came in rapid spurts. His chest hurt, and each ragged gasp pained him as it raced down his throat. Pushing himself to the limit, he couldn't possibly have run any faster. His thoughts became jumbled except for one. This was indeed a bad path to have gone down. Then terror filled his soul, for in front of him, blocking his only escape, was another long line of wolves. He was trapped. The wolves from all sides began slowly walking towards him with wicked smiles on their faces. Their tongues were hanging out and their teeth gleamed in the late afternoon sunlight. Their tattered ears lay back, ready for a quick and violent fight. In all the sandy terrain in these horrid surroundings, just one thing differed. On his left was a huge saguaro cactus. The boy backed up to it, for it was the only thing to hide his backside against. The wolves kept coming, and he was sure he had no way out. He looked at the cactus to see if there was any way to get up it, but it was covered with sharp spines. He pulled out his gifts and held them with rigid hands. He pointed them directly at the advancing wolves. Sadly, the fox said, "Boy, those are powerless in the midst of a bad choice." He shrugged, and he suggested they climbed the cactus. But the boy said, But we'll get hurt. We'll get... "Do you have any other ideas?" asked the fox. The boy hesitated. He looked up at the cactus. Then he looked at the wolves, who were now so close now he could almost smell their hot, foul breath. Seeing he had no alternative, simultaneously the fox leapt up and lapped his paws over the boy's shoulders. He had no time to gently pick his way up, because the wolves now rushed forward toward him furiously. He desperately threw his arms around the cactus, letting out a scream that caused Dark Sunshine to roll over, laughing incessantly. He climbed the cactus like a bear climbs a tree. With each upward thrust he screamed. Every square centimetre of his body was punctured, and his body went into intense shock. He reached the first fork in the cactus just as the first wolf jumped, its teeth slashing only inches from his foot. Other wolves, larger than the first one, charged the cactus, hurling themselves upward at the boy's feet. Painfully, the boy climbed toward the second fork in the cactus. By the time they reached safety, the boy and the fox were covered with bloody cuts and stab wounds from the cactus spikes. The boy's face was torn, his belly was torn, the insides of his legs and arms were torn. He felt as though every inch of his body had been injured. Turning his attention from his wounds to the commotion below, the boy realized they were hopelessly trapped. The wolves at the base of the cactus jumped and jumped. They began to behave even more viciously now that their prey was out of reach. They bit and tore at each other, and 2 of the wolves with oversized jaws began gnawing at the base of the cactus, trying to cut it down like a beaver would a tree. The boy, with huge tears flowing down his cheeks, looked at the fox and he said, "I'm sorry, Fox. I should have gone the other way with you." The fox said, "I'm sorry too, boy, but it doesn't look like being sorry is going to get us out of here, does it?" "No," the boy answered meekly. "Well, we may be here for a while, at least until these things decide to go away. Why don't you pull out your book of life and read to me? Maybe that will make us feel better." So the boy, trying to make himself as comfortable as he could, pulled out his book of life and opened it up. It opened to a page that talked about finding peace in the midst of a storm. As the boy read to the fox, he said, "This is so much like what we're going through right now. Here I am in this horrid situation, and there's nothing I can do about it. But perhaps there's something I can do about the way I react to it. Maybe I can look at it through different eyes. There's got to be something I can do that can make me at least feel better, since I have no control over what's going on down there." The fox whispered, "You're already doing it, boy. These sayings are truth." With his new awareness, the boy read page after page to the fox. Each page he read imparted some truth about life and getting through life in the best way possible, in the best possible shape. While he read, most of the wolves settled down as though they were waiting for something. However, the two wolves that had begun chewing at the bottom of the cactus continued to do so.